Resident Evil 2 wasn't supposed to work, and it was supposed to be finished months earlier, shipped in a form that was safe and forgettable. The first attempt, the one that we call Resident Evil 1.5, was already half built when Capcom realized something was missing. The fear wasn't sharp enough, the city felt kinda hollow, the characters didn't really last in your memory. So they did something really rare. They threw it away. Entire levels, entire characters, months of work, gone overnight. The project collapsed. But from that collapse came a different kind of horror. Not the stillness of the mansion, not silence and distance, but chaos. A city in flames, sirens without rescue, streets overrun. Where the first game whispered, the second game screamed. Resident Evil 2 wasn't about being alone anymore. It was about watching the world crumble around you. And realizing survival horror wasn't just an experiment, it was a foundation. Resident Evil 2 didn't start out inevitable, it started out broken. The first game had been a surprise success, selling more than anyone at Capcom expected. But success creates pressure, and the sequel became a different kind of nightmare. The first version of Resident Evil 2, what we know now as Resident Evil 1.5, was deep into development before the team realized something was wrong. The tone was off, the characters weren't memorable. The city didn't feel alive. Most companies would have shipped it anyways, but Capcom didn't. They scrapped nearly everything. Whole levels, entire characters, months of work erased. The team went back to zero. Shinji Mikami, fresh off directing the first game, stepped back into a producer role. He handed the director's chair to a newcomer, Hideki Kamiya, and gave him room to rebuild. What came out of that collapse wasn't just a sequel, it was a reinvention. Resident Evil 1 was a haunted house story, a single location, fixed angles, silence and unease stretched thin across wide walls and locked doors. It was about being alone, about distance, about the way fear could linger in the empty space between footsteps. Resident Evil 2 was different. It was chaos, a city on fire, sirens in the distance but no rescue coming, zombies in the streets, flames licking at ruined cars, and a police station that stood less like a safe haven and more like a mausoleum waiting to be filled. Where the mansion had been slow, deliberate, almost cold in its terror, Raccoon City was already gone by the time you arrived. There was no warm-up, no unraveling mystery, just survival in motion. And with that change came ambition. Resident Evil 2 wasn't just one story, it was two. Two protagonists, two paths, two different ways to experience the same nightmare. Leon Kennedy, the rookie cop starting his first day in hell. Claire Redfield, the sister searching for family and finding something far worse. Their campaigns didn't just mirror each other, they collided. Actions in one path could ripple into the other. Weapons carried over, doors locked and unlocked. Bosses shifted places. The game itself bent and reshaped depending on how you chose to survive. That structure gave Resident Evil 2 something rare. Weight. Every choice mattered, every bullet felt heavier. Because it wasn't just about getting through one corridor, it was about how the next corridor might change. And for the first time in the series, the horror wasn't contained, it spilled outward. Into characters who weren't just exposition dumps, but people fighting their own impossible battles. Ada Wong, Sherry Birkin, the entire Birkin family. Mutated and destroyed by the same umbrella arrogance that created the nightmare in the first place. What began as an accident with the first game became a foundation with the second. Resident Evil wasn't lightning in a bottle. It wasn't a one-time experiment, with camera angles and awkward controls. Resident Evil 2 proved survival horror wasn't just viable, it could grow, scale, and still keep its teeth sharp. If the mansion was about isolation, Resident Evil 2 was about collapse. About what happens when fear doesn't keep you out of the world, but swallows the world whole. And for the first time, survival horror wasn't just about being alone. It was about realizing you were never alone at all. After the streets, the police station feels like a breath, but it's not comfort, it's tension, stillness, the kind that builds under your skin. The Raccoon City Police Department, RPD, is where the real structure of Resident Evil 2 begins. And on paper, it shouldn't work. It's too ornate, too strange, too far removed from any police station you've ever seen. But that's the point. Because it wasn't built to be one. The RPD was originally an art museum. That detail isn't just lore, it defines the entire design of the space. Grand halls, stained glass, sculptures watching over you as you pass, massive wooden doors that creak like they're centuries old. It's architectural storytelling. You're not just moving through rooms, you're walking through a space that's been repurposed, stripped, and converted into something that was never meant to be. That feeling, that dissonance, is what gives this building its unease. From a design standpoint, the station serves as the game's central hub. Like the mansion in RE1, everything branches outward from here. Corridors, dead ends, locked doors. and secrets that circle back hours later. But where the mansion was cold and quiet by design, the police station feels more lived in, more real. You can see the desks, the whiteboards, the coffee cups left behind, the attempt to maintain some kind of order before the collapse. But whatever fight was happening here, it's long over. That's where the contrast hits hardest. Outside, the city's on fire. The sirens echo from far-off districts. Zombies flood the streets. It's loud, fast, and chaotic. Inside, everything is still. It's not safe, never safe, but still. It's the kind of quiet that makes you lean forward instead of breathe out. And it's not just atmosphere, that stillness is weaponized. Shadows move in just the right way. Doors creak slowly, windows shatter when you least expect it. The station becomes a psychological space, a building that wants you to get comfortable so it can punish you for it. What makes the RPD so iconic isn't just its layout or tone. It's how all that tied into the gameplay loop. Puzzles aren't just busy work, they're built into the bones of the station itself. Medallions locked inside statues, secret pathways beneath the main hall, power boxes you rewire to access new things. The entire space feels like it was designed to hide something, and it was. Not just in universe, but from a development lens too. Because the police station is the new mansion, but it had to be more than that. It had to feel public and private at the same time, safe and unsafe, familiar and surreal. And it works because the contradictions are never explained. No one ever pauses to question why the police department has a library, or a vault beneath a sculpture, or doors locked with spade keys. The game knows the station is absurd, but it doesn't need realism, it needs rhythm. And that rhythm never lets you rest. Even the way you explore the station matters. The layout forces you into loops. Backtracking becomes dangerous. Hallways you've cleared once are now flooded with new threats. Lickers clinging to ceilings, zombies crawling out from rooms you've already searched. The station doesn't stay static, it adapts. And once Mr. X arrives, even the illusion of safety is gone. The building doesn't just contain horror, it becomes part of it. That's why RPD remains one of the most memorable locations in the franchise. Not because it's believable, but because it's unforgettable. You feel the weight of every hallway, you remember the routes you took, the ones you didn't, the places where you got cornered, the moments where you thought you had time and didn't. It's not just a setting, it's the heart, the one that keeps beating even after you leave it behind. Resident Evil 2 didn't just expand the setting, it split the story, and in doing so it made the horror personal for everyone. From the beginning, RE2 gives you a choice, not between playstyles or difficulty settings, but between two people, Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield, two outsiders, two strangers. Leon's just starting his first day on the force. He doesn't even make it to the precinct before the world falls apart.
Head to the police station. It'll be a lot safer.
Claire's searching for her brother, Chris, after he disappears without a word. And what she finds instead is a city overrun. They come in from opposite ends of Raccoon City, but their paths cross almost immediately. And from that point forward, Resident Evil 2 does something that felt revolutionary in '98. It tells two stories at once, each incomplete without the other. This is the foundation of what Capcom called the zapping system. It wasn't just a gimmick, it changed how players engaged with the game. After completing the game with one character, what the game calls the A scenario, you unlock the B scenario for the other. Same night, same city, but now you're seeing what happened from the other side. And the choices you made in A, they ripple forward. You take the SMG in Leon A, Claire won't find it in her B run. If you use the side pack to expand your inventory, it won't be there for the other. All of it leaves an imprint. You're not just replaying the game, you're answering it. That was the brilliance of zapping. It didn't just encourage replayability, it made it part of the horror. You had to think ahead, think across. Every resource you used, every shortcut you took, every moment you survived, someone else would have to live with what you left behind. The A-B structure also unlocked 4 different campaign combinations, Leon A, Claire B, Claire A, Leon B, each with their own dialogue, puzzles, and pathing. Even areas you thought you knew could change. Enemy placement would shift, item locations would move. Sometimes subtly, sometimes not, but enough to make you hesitate, enough to make you question what you remembered. And that's where the fear creeps back in, because survival horror is built on knowledge, on knowing what to expect. But Resident Evil 2 made you doubt your own experience. You round a corner, confident you cleared it in your last run, and get blindsided. You plan a route to conserve ammo, only to find new threats waiting. Zapping didn't just increase difficulty, it reactivated dread. It taught you that horror doesn't need to change the rules, it just needs to make you unsure of what you thought you knew. Narratively, it also deepened the emotional range of the game. Leon's campaign pulled him into a conspiracy he didn't understand, but you couldn't ignore. He meets Ada Wong, undercover, elusive, dangerous, and slowly realizes the city's collapse was just a symptom of something deeper. Claire's story focuses more on care and protection. She finds Sherry Birkin, a child caught in the middle of her parents' monstrous legacy, and has to become something she never planned to be, a protector. Each character had their own tone, their own arc, and their own version of the nightmare. But only by playing both could you start to understand what really happened in Raccoon City. Even the way the campaigns intersected reflected that philosophy. You didn't just hear about another character's journey, you saw the aftermath. You passed through the rooms they'd already fought in. You stepped into their shadow and then had to move forward on your own. In that sense, Resident Evil 2 wasn't just about survival, it was about perspective. About how two people could walk through the same hell and come out changed in different ways. It's also part of what gave the game such lasting power, because for many players, beating the game once wasn't enough. You wanted to see the other side, you wanted to know what they saw, what they lost. And the game rewarded you for that curiosity. Today, it's easy to take this kind of dual campaign design for granted, but back then, it was rare. And for horror especially, it was almost unheard of. The mansion in RE1 taught you how to be afraid. The police station in RE2 taught you how to survive. But the zapping system, that taught you how to see. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you. Seriously, there's a lot that goes into these, and just you sticking around this far, it really means a lot. If you're enjoying the video, consider leaving a like, dropping a comment, or subbing if you haven't already. It's a small thing on your end, but it really tells the algorithm and me that this kind of content is worth pushing further. And if you're someone who really wants to help the channel grow directly, YouTube's added something new called a hype button, where you can give the video hype points and it directly pushes it harder into the algorithm and to more people. It kind of tells YouTube, this video matters, show it to more people. It's totally optional, but it really makes a huge difference for the smaller channels like this. And just real quick, before we move on, I want to take a moment to pay respect to someone who played a quiet but unforgettable role in what made Resident Evil 2 special. Paul Haddad was the original voice of Leon Kennedy in the 1998 release. That voice, slightly stiff, a little awkward, but filled with heart, became iconic in a way that no one could have predicted. It wasn't just the lines, it was the tone, the sense of someone trying to do the right thing in a world falling apart. For a lot of us, that was Leon. Paul never returned for the remake, but his performance left a lasting mark on the series, and on survival horror in general.
What are these things? All right, that's far enough.
His voice became part of the DNA of what Resident Evil sounded like during that era. What most people don't know is that Paul's final voice role before he passed was an indie horror game called Daymare 1998. It was a spiritual successor to games like this, made by fans for fans, and Paul showed up one last time, as if to say goodbye to the genre he helped shape. He passed away in 2020, but his work, his voice, still echoes through this series. And if you played Resident Evil 2 back in the day, you probably hear it just as clearly as I do. Rest in peace, Paul, and thank you.
Wait! Don't shoot!
Get down! We can't stay out here. Head to the police station. It'll be a lot safer.
RE2 doesn't start with abundance, it starts with desperation, and then it stays there. From the very first moments, the game locks you into a resource loop. Do you heal now or risk it later? Do you shoot to clear a path or dodge to save ammo? Do you bring the puzzle piece that you might need, or the weapon you definitely will? That's survival horror. But RE2 doesn't just reuse the formula from the first game, it amplifies it. Enemies are faster, deadlier, and more unpredictable. And your tools, they're limited, fragile, and finite. Inventory space feels like a punishment. You can carry a few essentials, but never everything. And every slot you fill is one you'll second guess an hour later. Safe rooms become sacred, not because they're quiet, but because they're controlled. A locked door, a typewriter, an item box. It's the only moment the game lets you breathe. But even in that pause, the tension doesn't let go. You'll sit there staring at your inventory, trying to decide if 2 green herbs is enough, trying to remember if the hallway ahead is still clear, trying to convince yourself you don't need that 1 green herb you're about to leave behind. It's a slow psychological pressure, not about overwhelming the player, about making them doubt. Then come the puzzles, and at first they seem like a break, a shift in focus, but puzzles in RE2 aren't rewards, they're a new kind of threat. You'll stand in front of a statue or a fuse box and suddenly feel the weight of time. You're not solving these in peace, you're solving them under surveillance. Something's always moving, always listening. The medallion puzzle, the electric panel near the jail. The bookshelves in the library you have to shift, slowly, loudly, while you're exposed. Puzzles don't break the loop, they deepen it. Because now you're not just managing inventory, you're managing attention. How long can you afford to stand still? And that tension shifts depending on where you are. Outside, the chaos is obvious. The city's burning, zombies are everywhere. It's loud, messy, immediate. Inside, the station is quiet, very quiet. The light barely reaches the end of the halls. You can hear your own footsteps. You think you're safe until you're not. Because the police station doesn't just house threats, it is one. Every corridor loops back into itself. Enemies return. Hallways repopulate. And just when you learn a space, it changes. When Mr. X arrives, the illusion breaks completely. He walks where you walk, tracks what you do, and turns the one place you thought was manageable into something worse, unstable. That's the pressure, not action or jump scares, just a slow grind on your nerves. Resident Evil 2 doesn't overwhelm, it erodes. Every bullet you waste is a regret, every door you open is a risk, every puzzle you solve is one step closer to being hunted again. And it works because the game never gives you enough, not enough space, enough time, not enough safety. It's not about surviving one fight, it's about surviving the whole night. Enemy design wasn't just about variety, it was about shifting the balance of power and forcing you to adapt. In the original game, most enemies were isolated threats. You could plan around them, clear a hallway, and never worry about them again. RE2 removed that stability. Zombies now came in numbers. You might enter a hallway and find 3, 4, even 5 grouped together, slumped over a dead body, some already moving. They don't die easily. Headshots are unreliable. They can fall, get back up, and even grab you in tight spaces when the camera doesn't favor you. This changed how you had to think. It wasn't about eliminating threats, it was about choosing when not to engage. Every bullet spent in the wrong place had long-term consequences. Even a single missed shot could mean rerouting through a more dangerous area. And the liquor escalated this. Unlike the zombies, lickers respond to your behavior. They're blind, but react to sound. If you run or shoot, there's a high chance they'll detect you. That introduces a mechanic that wasn't present in RE1, a light stealth mechanic. The optimal strategy becomes walking slowly through the rooms, assessing whether it's worth using resources to eliminate the threat, or if avoidance is possible. The tension doesn't come from the licker's appearance, it comes from how it alters your playstyle. Loud, reactive players get punished. Cautious, observant players are rewarded. It's a behavioral check, one that's enforced without needing a tutorial. Once you trigger a licker by mistake, you remember not to do it again. And the boss fights are definitely louder and more visually intense than anything in the first game. But they don't change what kind of game this is. You're not meant to walk into these fights feeling powerful, you're meant to walk in with questions. Did I bring the right gear? How much ammo do I actually have left? Can I afford to take a hit, or is that going to be run ending? Every boss is a resource check first, spectacle second. The fights with William Birkin, especially as he mutates, do look more cinematic. He grows, changes shape, picks up speed. Later forms take up more of the arena and hit harder. But none of that actually changes the core pressure. These aren't damage sponges. They're there to see how well you've been managing everything leading up to that point. The game doesn't throw quick-time events or massive scripted set pieces at you, it just asks, do you have what you need to get through this? That's what keeps the tension high. Even when you know what's coming, the actual fight comes down to how well you planned. Most of these encounters aren't even especially long. They're fast, dirty, and stressful. If you're underprepared, it's over quick. If you're stocked up and focused, you still might scrape by on fumes. And that's the point. Even when the bosses get bigger, flashier, or more animated, the design never leans into power fantasy. It stays grounded, still survival, still pressure over power. The first Resident Evil kept its story small. One building, one mission, a handful of survivors. You were isolated, and that isolation was part of the horror. Resident Evil 2 changed that. The world didn't just get bigger, it got more complicated. And the story became less about surviving alone and more about surviving together, whether you wanted to or not. This is where the series starts layering things. Files, facilities, faces, and none of it's optional. You learn by digging, but also by proximity, by who you're stuck with, who you run into, and what they're running from. The core plot kicks off 2 months after the mansion incident. The virus is no longer contained. Raccoon City is already overrun by the time Leon and Claire arrive. It's not an outbreak in progress, it's aftermath. And Umbrella's fingerprints are all over it. The police station is barely functioning. Most officers are already dead or infected. Chief Irons, the man who's supposed to be in charge, is actively helping cover up what happened. He's working with Umbrella, stalling any outside help, and hiding evidence tied to the research. This isn't just corruption, it's collaboration. A full system collapsed from the inside. As you push deeper into the city and the underground facility, you start to learn what really triggered the disaster. Not the T virus this time, but the G virus, a more advanced strain developed by Umbrella scientist William Birkin. After trying to defect and sell it to the US government, Birkin is attacked by Umbrella's own security forces and ends up injecting himself with the virus to stay alive. It works, but it also turns him into something completely inhuman. From that point on, Birkin becomes a recurring boss across both campaigns. He's not just a mutation, he's the thread that connects Umbrella, the outbreak, and the story's emotional core. Because Birkin isn't just a scientist gone wrong, he's also a father.
What is this thing? Fire! Fire! You son of a...
This is the first time the series really dives into parallel character arcs. Sherry Birkin, William's daughter, is caught in the middle, running from her mutated father while her mother, Annette, stays behind trying to stop the spread. Claire becomes her guardian figure, and protecting Sherry becomes more than just a side objective. It becomes the emotional through line of her campaign. And Leon, on the other hand, gets entangled with Ada Wong, a woman posing as someone searching for her missing boyfriend, but clearly hiding something. She's calm, capable, and always a step ahead, until she isn't. And by the time Leon starts to question who she really is, it's already too far in. These supporting characters aren't just here to give you dialogue between shootouts. They shape your route, your goals, and the tone of the story. The game forces you to take responsibility of other people, and it changes the way you approach danger. In RE1, fear came from being alone. In RE2, fear comes from what you can't control around you. People, systems, agendas. And that's what makes the story hit harder. You're not just navigating a ruined city, you're caught between families, betrayal, and corporate collapse. The other half of the story isn't in cutscenes, it's in documents. Scattered across the station and the labs are written reports, logs, emails, and memos that fill in everything Umbrella didn't say out loud. You read about failed experiments, you piece together what Birkin was trying to do, and how many people he hurt to get there. You learn how the police were being manipulated, how the outbreak didn't spiral, it was practically designed to fail. The Nest Lab itself is a vault of bad decisions, sterile, locked down, but clearly crumbling under its own secrecy. It doesn't feel like a high-tech facility, it feels like something abandoned before the rest of the world even knew it existed. And the more you read, the more you realize the truth wasn't buried, it was filed. This is where the game quietly teaches you the full scope of its world. Umbrella doesn't make mistakes, they bury them. The government doesn't intervene, they watch. And most people don't survive long enough to tell anyone what they've seen. This is the biggest shift from the first game. RE1 was about containment, a single location, limited access, fear through restriction. RE2 is about entanglement. The city's gone, the system has failed, and every person you meet is already caught in something bigger than themselves. Claire gets pulled into a family's collapse. Leon walks straight into espionage and manipulation. The Birkins are living proof that this virus wasn't an accident, it was personal. A family's ambition, a company's failure, a city's cost. And you, the player, are never just passing through, you're part of it, whether you understand it or not. Resident Evil 2 doesn't try to explain everything in one monologue. It builds the story sideways, through intersections. You get one angle, then another, until you realize the horror isn't what you don't know. It's in how many people knew and let it happen anyway. By the time RE2 launched, there was already pressure on Capcom to prove the first game wasn't a fluke. The mansion had worked. It was tight, scary, memorable. But how do you follow that up? The answer wasn't to repeat it, it was to scale it, without losing what made it scary in the first place, and somehow Resident Evil 2 pulled it off. The big risk with RE2 was size. Bigger settings usually mean less tension, more space to run, more places to hide, more room for the player to feel in control. But RE2 found a way to expand without letting that happen. It moved from the mansion to an entire city, the police station, sewers, labs, city streets, and still kept you boxed in. Every space was designed to feel just as claustrophobic. The RPD wasn't an open world hub, it was a maze. The sewers weren't an escape, they were a detour into something worse. Even the labs, which should have felt high-tech and clean, felt like tombs. And it wasn't just the layout, the pacing, the item economy, the sound design, it all stayed grounded in survival horror. You never felt safe, you never had enough, and that's what mattered.
Look, I'm sorry I bothered you, okay?
RE2 proved you didn't have to keep things small to keep them scary. You just had to keep the player off balance. The impact was immediate. A lot of what people think of when they picture Resident Evil is the RPD, Leon, Claire, Ada, the G-Virus mutations. All of that came from this game. Resident Evil 3 reused and recontextualized the city. Code Veronica carried the split protagonist model forward. Even RE0 tried to replicate the feeling of two characters overlapping a larger narrative. When Resident Evil 2 launched in '98, it was a massive hit. Critics praised its pacing, atmosphere, and how it improved on the first game without losing its identity. Over 5 million copies sold on PlayStation alone. Multiple Game of the Year awards, huge fan response, even at a time when horror wasn't mainstream. The only consistent critique was around some of the puzzles feeling simplistic, or the inventory system still a bit clunky. But the consensus was clear. RE2 delivered. There's a kind of irony to how Resident Evil evolved. The first game was subtle. It built tension through silence, space, and lack of information. You had time to think and time to worry. RE2 came in louder. It dropped you into chaos immediately. There were more enemies, more characters, more moving parts. It should have fallen apart under its own weight, but it didn't. Instead of collapsing the formula, it showed that horror didn't have to be quiet to be effective. It just had to be controlled. And that's why both games still hold up. RE1 created the rules. RE2 tested how far they could stretch. And it didn't just grow the franchise, it helped define what horror games could be. That you can have story without sacrificing tension, that scale doesn't have to kill suspense, that characters can be vulnerable without being weak. It took what Resident Evil 1 started and proved it had legs, not just as a one-off experiment, but as a long-term blueprint. And whether you played the original or the remake, that feeling still holds. The horror isn't in what's coming next, it's in how far you've already gone and how little control you still have. Resident Evil 2 didn't just build on what came before it, it reframed it. The mansion in RE1 made you feel isolated, quiet, trapped, alone, and was something lurking in the dark. But RE2 stepped outside that door, into a city already lost, into a world where isolation wasn't the fear anymore. It was the reality everyone had already failed to escape. You weren't alone anymore, and that's what made it worse, because now every hallway, every back alley, every face you met was part of the fallout. The virus didn't just infect bodies, it infected the entire system. Families, police departments, entire institutions rotted from the inside, from a haunted house to a city in flames. RE2 showed that survival horror could grow without losing what mattered, and it reminded us that the scariest thing isn't being trapped, it's knowing you're surrounded and no one's coming to help you. For 1998, that was more terrifying than the mansion ever could be. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it still is. If you've made it to the end, thank you. These videos take quite a bit to put together, and if you're still watching, it really means a lot. So if you haven't already, leave a like, drop a comment, or hit subscribe. It really does help grow the channel a lot. And if you want to push the video even further, there's a new option now, the hype button. It's a direct way to tell YouTube, hey, this video's good, show it to more people. It's totally optional, but it really does help in a massive way. But as always, I'll see y'all later.